Welcome to another episode of Eberhart Outdoors, and you may wonder why it's black. It's because I'm in some timber and the foliage is on, and this is what it looks like when you walk in the woods. So, the reason for this video is this is something that never ever gets talked about. I put it in my DVDs that I did in 2004, 2005. I had a complete section on entry and exits as far as what lights to use and what types of reflective tacks according to what, public or private land, so people couldn't see them. Something bothers me a lot, and it has for probably 25 to 30 years, and it's the use of headlamps. All the TV guys, pretty much all the YouTube guys, pretty much everybody I know uses headlamps. And I have no clue why, but I'm going to show you why I do not recommend using headlamps, because they definitely spook deer that you will never know you spooked because they're so bright. And during the rut phases, you can see them for a mile to a mile and a half. If you get anything 300 to 600 lumens, they're extremely bright. And all the guys on TV use them. Most people that are hunting, lightly hunted and managed in TV type Fantasyland stuff, zoo type settings, yeah, you can get away with that kind of stuff because there's enough deer you can spook some and you'll still have your opportunities eventually. But when you're hunting pressured lands where everything matters, every little detail matters, this is a big detail. This will, if you use headlamps for the rest of your hunting career, I 100% promise that you will spook deer, but you will never know it because they are so far in front of you when you spook them, because they can see that light for such a long distance. I've seen that many, many times. I'm usually in my trees an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours before daylight. And I sit there and then I watch, especially on public land, the private land gets as much pressure in a lot of the places, but it's surrounding pressure, not so much maybe on each particular 5 or 10 acre parcel. But when you put all of the hunters on all those small parcels in a section together, you're looking at 20 to 40 bow hunters per section, same as on public land. It's not really a whole lot different. So this stuff does make a difference. And like I say, when I'm sitting in trees, I can actually see people coming in, especially when the foliage is down, for a good mile, sometimes a mile and a half, depending on whether I'm looking through a lot of trees or I'm looking across an open swamp or across a cattail marsh, where I got a clear view. I can see a long ways and soak in the deer. A lot of guys do it on on open crop fields in the mornings. And if there's a deer out in the crop field, you're going to spook them. And over a course of a hunting career, it's going to cost you opportunities. There's so many things that are going to cost people opportunities that are minor details because you don't spook deer that often doing it, but over a career, it's going to cost you a lot of opportunities. It's like hunting from a saddle. When you're hunting on a platform with no steps around the backside to move around and hide from the deer, and you want to shoot a deer that's at your 3 o'clock, 4, 5, or 6, you physically have to, and this is on YouTube all the time by hunters that haven't killed that much. They've shot some deer on managed properties, but that much movement, spinning 180 degrees while your body is on the same side of the tree as the deer, you are going to get picked. There's going to come a time, there's going to be several times in your career where you will get picked. Deer will see you. And it's just so easy to put steps around the backside of the tree and move around the tree and keep the tree as a hiding buffer and then slide to the side when you get your shot opportunity when the deer's not looking that direction. But to make a 180 degree spin on a platform, I can't even comprehend doing that. That blows my mind, actually. But it's on YouTube all the time. I'd say probably 90% of hunters I see on YouTube turn around 180 degrees, all that body movement. You don't do that in a pressured area. You will get picked eventually, quite frequently, actually. I can't even fathom doing that. But anyway, this one's going to be on using lights for your entries, and I'm actually going to show you the actual lights. I've got white tack, I've got an orange tack, I've got a green tack, and I've got a brown tack. And then I also have a clip-on orange reflective, and then I also have a clip-on brown reflective ones, which I'm going to show you. The brown one, you can hardly even see it in the daytime. The orange one, you can see really good in the daytime. So this is about keeping your locations where other people can't find them, you know, during daylight hours because they can't see the tacks. And it's also going to be on flashlights and a visual of how invasive and intrusive using a headlamp is. You know, when you're walking through the woods and you've got your head, it's on your head. Every time you turn your head, you're looking down at the ground, looking where you're stepping. Then you look up ahead for the next tack, or you're turning your head because you hear a noise to the side. All that flashing movement is a big deal in a pressured area. To alleviate that, all you need is a little tiny, you know, a AAA or a 2 AAA flashlight, you know, something in the 20 to 30 lumen area. You don't need a 300 to 500 lumen headlamp. You know, you can control a flashlight when it's physically in your hand. You can cup your hand over it and keep the beam down on the ground, cup your hand over it so you can't see it from the front, and then just flip it up every so often when you need to find your next tack. So I'm going to actually go down and walk towards the camera with headlamps and with my flashlights. So it's going to be 3 or 4 different trips. Okay, that was with my entry single AAA battery flashlight. Okay, that was with a 200 lumen headlamp. Next one will be with a 400 lumen headlamp. That's a 400 lumen headlamp. I've repped a lot of headlamp companies, so I have quite a few of them. I don't ever use any unless it's for blood trailing. I keep that one in my van along with a monster Coast 4D cell for blood trailing as well. That was with a six or 7. That's with another one of my flashlights. That one has 2 AAA batteries, but you can tell the difference in those last 3 headlamps versus AAA flashlights. And that's all you need. All you need for an entry is enough to see the ground and your next tack in front of you. That's all you need. The lower impact you have on an entry, the less chance you're going to have of spooking deer, the better odds you're going to have of killing a deer, because you may spook the deer you're trying to actually kill. So having these bright lights, and then once you get to the tree, you're going up the tree, your head's turning, or your head's moving all the time, you're raising your head up, looking where the steps or the sticks are, whatever, climbing into your stand. Now you're way up. You're up 18 to 25 feet. And now that light can be seen from a seriously long distance, and people still use them. I don't get it. I've been bow hunting for 54 seasons, and when I'm hunting in Michigan, On public land and most of even the private places that I hunt, there's 20 to 40 bow hunters per square mile, and twice as many gun hunters per square mile during opening day of gun season. I'm not saying there's 20 to 40 bow hunters in there every day, but during the course of the season, there's 20 to 40 different bow hunters hunting on the properties within that square mile or on that piece of public land. So you have 5s and 10s and 20-acre parcels and 40s, and you put two, 1, 2, 3, 4 guys on a piece, and you're 640 acres in a section. That adds up pretty fast. And most of the bow hunters are targeting any legal antlered buck. So mature bucks are very rare, and they're very smart. If they're not, they would be dead. It's that simple. So it's not like TV fantasy land, zoo-style hunting, or large micromanage leases or pay-to-hunt ranches where deer grow up and they never get targeted until they hit a specific age class. So those guys can get away with murder, including wearing bright, high-lumen headlamps for entries and exits. Details matter, and when you're hunting pressured deer, a lot of minor details add up to major details. So for you guys that are using headlamps for your entries and you think you're not spooking deer, you are very, very wrong. You may not ever notice it because they move way in front of you, on morning entries in the dark. I don't think I've ever been in my tree later than anybody else on the property. I'm always in my tree, settled in way before anybody else even thinks about coming onto the property with a normal half hour to hour before daylight entry. So I see these guys coming onto public land, especially when the foliage is down during the rut phases. I can see them coming sometimes from a mile away. They may park a mile away and I can see their headlamps and I can see them coming in. And if I can see them, obviously the deer can see them as well. And I don't know how many times I've had guys park on the road maybe 3/8 of a mile away, and I've had to actually walk through some form of a marsh or use hip boots or waders, but I can still see beyond where I had to cross, and I can see these guys coming in with their headlamps. And many times I've had deer run by me in the dark because these guys are spooking these deer with their entries, and they're going by me further back, deeper into the security cover before daylight. So I've seen it. I've seen it hundreds of times. And, if you're hunting in micromanaged properties and stuff where you're going to get your kill opportunities during the course of a year, no matter what the heck you do, you can get away with murder. I say that every video because it is so true. And I know lots of guys that are relatively high profile guys. They haven't killed a lot of stuff, but they're high profile on YouTube, and they use headlamps. Now, just to give you an example, this is a 200 lumen headlamp, okay? That's pretty bright. I put this on my head. I'm moving my head around, I'm moving my head around. I don't know if you can see that, but when I'm moving my head, that light's going all over the place. And that can be seen for a long distance. And this is only a 200 lumen light. A lot of guys use heavy, big beam flashlights. This is a 700 lumen light. If you don't think you can see that flashlight for a long ways, with no foliage, if this were across an open weed field or a crop field, you'd be able to see this probably for 1.5 miles. And if you think deer can't see that, you're sadly mistaken. This is a Coleman headlamp. Very simple. I think this is a 250 lumen light. Also, I don't know how many times I've been sitting in trees after dark on public land where I may not have heard somebody come in to their actual tree in the evening, but I've actually, because they get down with a headlamp, and they have the headlamp when they're physically getting out of the tree and they're turning their head, they're looking around for their steps or their sticks or whatever, and that light's flashing all over the place. Spooking deer with an exit, it's not as critical as spooking deer with an entry where you're going to hunt right after that, but spooking deer with an exit's not cool either. Spooking deer at any point in time when you're hunting a specific location is not cool. Deer have memories, so they will keep that in mind the next time they have to go by that spot during daylight hours, especially mature deer. Now, a lot of guys wear their headlamps on their hats. Here's 3 different types of headlamps. This is one Berkeley made. This one's not a very high lumen, but I used to rep for Berkeley fishing tackle in the 90s, and this was a headlamp for fishing. But you could wear it for hunting as well. And guys used to buy these and wear them for hunting. And it's a relatively high lumen light. This one here, the batteries don't work because it uses those little round flat ones, and I never use this. So this one just hooks onto your bill. But again, it moves with your hat, moves with your head. This is another one here. It's made by Coast. Relatively bright. I mean, this would be a fine flashlight to use as long as you were using it like this for your entries, where you got your hand cupped over it and you're basically shining it on the ground. You got it cupped over it so it doesn't have this bright beam flashing all over the place on your hat. You know, if you have your hand cupped over it, this is just a single AAA flashlight. This is the kind of flashlight I use on entries. And it's fine for seeing the ground. That's all you need to do is see the ground in front of you and possibly look up and see your next tack. If you're actually following tacks, or, you know, a lot of guys follow their onyx. But I do tacks a lot, and I'm going to show those in a while. But flashlights make a difference on entries. Noise makes a difference on entries. This one here is a Coast, and every Coast flashlight I've ever bought, I used to rep these, that's why I have them. It makes a click. That one's not too bad, but this is a Duracell. This is a flashlight that was pretty popular back in the 90s. That makes a really loud click. To me, that's unacceptable. That is an unacceptable noise when I'm walking on entries. Typically on my entries, typically relatively quiet. I try to go in extra early if I got a really long entry because I don't want to snap twigs. And it's really important to be as quiet as you can. In fact, when I'm out west hunting, making noise is an extreme negative, but it's in a different direction. You know, in Michigan, when I make noise with an entry, I'm physically spooking deer away from the area. But out west, you have to be super quiet because there's so many mature bucks and the rut is so competitive, and that's when we are out there hunting. If you're making noise walking through a draw and there's deer up on the high ground, up in the crop fields, because the draws are the low ground where the deer move to after daylight, and that's where they transition through during daytime. If you make noise down in the draws, a lot of times if there's a mature buck up there, he'll actually come down to you. You make noise and they think it's another deer, and they'll physically come to you. And it might even happen in a pressured area, but they're not going to get that close before they spook. And I've had them walk up within 10 yards out west while I'm entering, you know, an hour and a half before daylight. So it's different out there because the deer are not quite up to the IQ. This is a small flashlight, but still, it's relatively bright. Especially when you put it on beam. Just like this one did. This one had the same thing. The brighter the beam, the more apt you are to spook deer. These are the lights I typically use right here. So I will carry some of these bigger ones. These are big to me. This one here has got 2 AA batteries in it. And this is a light I will use for blood trailing deer. So this is in my pack. It's not used for entries and exits, but it's used for blood trailing deer, and it doesn't add a lot of weight. So it's relatively light. This is another one. It's another one. Again, this one's a 2 AA batteried flashlight. Works great for blood trailing deer. So the lights that I like to use are stuff like this. Yeah, this is a little tiny old mag light, and it's got a really light beam. Now this is one that was made by Buck Knives back when I used to rep for Buck Knives, and this has 2 AA batteries in it, and it had a clear plastic around the head of the flashlight, which I put black electrical tape because I don't want anything shining to the sides. So what I do with this light is I turn it on, very low beam, and then I cup my hand over it. I cup my hand over it just enough to see the ground and the tacks in front of me. And then this is another one. This is a Browning. Again, this is a 2 AAA flashlight, and it had the same thing. It had clear plastic up here, so I covered that up so that when I turn this on, you can't see it to the sides. So this is another one that I cup over. I just cup my hands over it so you can't see. I'm going to show you this in the dark. I'm fortunate enough to have a basement with no windows in it, so it's pitch black in here when I turn these lights out. So I'm going to actually show you these lights in the dark just to show you what a difference it is as far as how many lumens and how easily it's going to be to spook deer. And you'll never know it. They go so far ahead of you, you don't know that you're spooking deer, but you do, because this is plenty enough light to see to enter a location. Why you have to have a headlamp to shine all over the place and spook the hell out of everything, I have no clue, but I've witnessed it. I've sat in the trees. I've seen it for 50 years. Because headlamps have been around for a long, long time. Probably my favorite is this one. This is just a single AAA, and I cup my hand over this one. This one's just really nice. Just really nice. Nice low beam, relatively broad, and I can easily see the ground in front of me, and I can easily see the steps or the tacks in front of me if I want to look for my next tack. And also if I'm climbing a tree, once in a blue moon I'll need a light when I'm climbing a tree. Typically I don't. I'll just stick it in my mouth. This one's probably my favorite one as far as having it in my mouth when I'm climbing a tree, because it's wider, so I can just turn it on. But it's very rare that I ever need a flashlight to climb a tree. I can do whatever. Typically, by the time you get to your tree, if you're in a preset, your eyes have adjusted to the light, and it's pretty easy to climb in the dark. Every little detail matters. You're gonna spook deer with headlamps. That's a 100% guarantee. You may not know it, but you're gonna do it. I've witnessed it. I can't reiterate that enough. I've seen it so many times. And when you really stop and think about it, do you really need 200 to 500 lumens of light to walk through marsh grass or through whatever? Do you really need that much light? Of course you don't. You can get by with any of these little lights. If interested, the links to many of the podcasts I've been on, or for information about my 2-day whitetail workshops that take place in March and April, please visit my website at deer-john.net. Thank you for watching another episode of Eberhart Outdoors, and to receive notifications for future videos, please subscribe.